Jake Morrison walked into the huge meeting room floating in space above the planet. Kepler 442b. The room was filled with creatures from 47 different worlds. Some looked like giant insects, others were made of crystal, and a few appeared to be living clouds of energy. They all stared at the human ambassador as he took his place at the center table. Morrison was 55 years old, with gray hair and tired blue eyes. He had spent the last 30 years trying to keep peace between Earth and the rest of the galaxy. Today would be his final attempt. "Members of the Galactic Council," Morrison began, his voice calm and steady. "I come before you one last time to deliver a message from Earth and all human colonies." The insect-like creature from the hegemony clicked its sharp mouthpieces together. This was Prime Executor Keth Volume, the most powerful being in known space. "Speak quickly, human. We have important matters to discuss after we deal with your species." Morrison pulled out a small device and placed it on the table. A hologram appeared showing Earth's military records. "For 300 years, we have followed every rule you made for us. We limited how many ships we could build. We agreed not to develop certain weapons. We stayed in our small corner of space and caused no trouble. A crystal being named Vexstar made a sound like breaking glass, which was how his species laughed. Your people control less than 100 worlds. The hegemony alone has over 3,000. What could you possibly threaten us with?" Lieutenant Commander Lisa Parker, Morrison's assistant, stepped forward. She was a young woman with short, brown hair and sharp green eyes. "Sir, permission to show them the classified files?" Morrison nodded. Parker activated another device, and the hologram changed to show weapon designs that made several aliens lean forward in surprise. "These are specifications for weapons we developed but never built," Morrison explained. "Technologies we created but chose not to use. We're showing you this information because we want you to understand something very important." The war chief of the Krathari, a four-armed giant named Guathak, slammed his fists on the table. "Impossible. If humans had such weapons, you would have used them during the Centauri crisis 5 years ago." "That's exactly the point," Morrison said quietly. "We chose not to use them. There's a big difference between can't do something and won't do something. We were hoping you would understand that difference." The Prime Executor's compound eyes focused on the human ambassador. "Your species has been given a great honor by being allowed to exist in our galaxy. But that honor comes with responsibilities. Human expansion ends now. You will surrender 12 of your outer colonies to proper galactic oversight within 3 days." Morrison stood up slowly. His face showed no emotion, but something cold appeared in his eyes. "We came here to offer peace through honesty. We showed you our real capabilities because we hoped you would choose wisdom over war, but you've made your choice." "And what choice is that?" asked Vexstar, still amused by what he saw as human desperation. "You've chosen to find out what humans are really like when we stop being polite," Morrison replied. "When this is over, remember that we tried to warn you." The council chamber erupted in sounds of anger and dismissal. Creatures roared, clicked, and made electronic noises of contempt. The Prime Executor raised one clawed hand for silence. "Your species has 3 days to comply with our demands. If you refuse, the hegemony fleet will demonstrate why we rule this galaxy. You may leave now." Morrison gathered his materials and walked toward the exit. At the doorway, he turned back one final time. "In human history, we have a saying, 'Don't mistake kindness for weakness.' You're about to learn what that means." As their ship left the council station, Parker sat in the co-pilot seat reviewing the meeting. "They really don't believe us, do they?" "No," Morrison said, setting course for Earth. "They think our restraint proves we're weak. They can't imagine a species that chooses not to use its full power." "What happens now?" Morrison activated the quantum communicator. "Now we tell President Davis that diplomacy has failed. It's time for the galaxy to see what humans are really capable of." On Earth, President Helen Davis sat in the Oval Office with her top advisors. Secretary of Defense Robert Hayes was reading reports from the outer colonies. General Paul Newman, head of the Joint Chiefs, was reviewing classified military files. Director of Strategic Operations Susan Walsh, was coordinating with intelligence agencies across human space. The quantum communicator chimed, and Morrison's face appeared on the main screen. Madam President, they refuse to listen. The hegemony fleet is already moving toward our border worlds. They've given us 3 days to surrender 12 colonies. Davis leaned back in her chair. She was 48 years old and had been president for 6 years. She had hoped this moment would never come. How long until they reach New Texas? 72 hours, Secretary Hayes replied. The colony is requesting immediate evacuation of all civilians. Evacuate the civilians, yes, Davis said firmly. But we don't run from New Texas, we make our stand there. It's time to show the galaxy what happens when humanity stops playing by their rules. General Newman activated a holographic display that filled the room. It showed military assets that had been hidden for decades. Ships, weapons, and technologies that existed in the deepest classified files of Earth's government. Are you authorizing full deployment of the Shadow Arsenal? Newman asked. Davis looked at each of her advisors. They all nodded grimly. Everything, she confirmed. No more restrictions. No more hiding what we can do. If they want to see our true capabilities, then we'll give them a demonstration they'll never forget. Walsh opened a secure channel to military commanders across human space. All units, this is Strategic Command. Authorization code, Omega 77 Delta. Repeat, Omega 77 Delta. The Shadow Arsenal is now active across hundreds of human worlds. Military bases that didn't officially exist began powering up. Ships that had been listed as experimental for decades started receiving crews. Weapons that had been developed in secret laboratories were loaded onto vessels that could bend space and time. In the New Texas system, Captain Danny Rogers received the activation codes aboard his defense station. The station looked like a simple mining platform, but it was actually the command center for the most advanced military technology humanity had ever created. Well, boys, Rogers said to his crew, looks like we're about to find out if all those years of preparation were worth it. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Kevin Walsh, brought up displays showing the approaching hegemony fleet. Sir, they're bringing over 300 ships, including their largest dreadnought. Good, Rogers replied with a grim smile. The bigger they are, the more impressive it'll be when we show them what human engineering can really do. The captain activated systems that had been dormant for years. Around the New Texas system, devices that had been disguised as asteroids, space debris, and sensor equipment began to reveal their true nature. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity had been building weapons in secret for centuries. Send a message to the hegemony fleet, Rogers ordered. Tell them they have one last chance to turn around. After that, they're going to learn why Earth warned them we were holding back. As the message was transmitted, Rogers looked out at the stars, where the enemy fleet was approaching. In a few hours, the galaxy would understand that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was their ability to appear weak while preparing for the moment when they would have to be strong, the war that was about to begin would change everything. But first, the galaxy had to learn that when humans said they were holding back, they meant it literally. The Shadow Arsenal was about to become very, very real. Supreme Commander Zolthek of the Andromedan Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship, Universe Crusher, and watched the largest military fleet in galactic history assemble around him. Over 10,000 warships from 47 different species had answered the call to destroy humanity. Once and for all, the news of the hegemony's defeat at New Texas had shocked the core worlds. Admiral Kishimora's surviving crews had told impossible stories about human weapons that ignored shields and ships that appeared from nowhere. Most galactic leaders assumed the reports were exaggerated by traumatized survivors. Today we correct the mistakes made by inferior species, Zolthek announced to his assembled fleet commanders. The humans showed impressive technology against the hegemony, but they cannot match the combined might of the galaxy's greatest civilizations. The coalition was truly massive. The Andromedans brought their legendary Titan-class battleships, each one larger than a human city. The Mentari contributed their psychic warriors who could destroy enemy minds across vast distances. The Stellar Collective sent energy beings who could exist in the vacuum of space. The synthetic hegemony deployed machine intelligences that calculated faster than organic minds could think. Our sensors show only 200 human ships defending the Rigel system, reported Admiral Vorthak of the Mentari. Even with their advanced technology, they cannot defeat 10,000 vessels. What the aliens didn't know was that humanity had been monitoring their communications for months. Deep beneath the Colorado Mountains on Earth, General Lisa Grant coordinated humanity's response from the Strategic Command Center. "They're bringing everything they have," Grant reported to President Davis through quantum communication. 57 species, over 12,000 ships counting support vessels. They have weapons that can crack planets and psychic attacks. That can destroy entire crews. Our assessment? Davis asked from the White House. "We can handle it," Grant replied with quiet confidence. "But we'll need to deploy the really deep arsenal. The weapons we swore we'd only use if humanity's survival was at stake." In the Rigel system, Captain Roy Fisher stood on the bridge of the human battleship Earthshaker. His defense fleet of 200 ships looked pathetically small compared to the approaching alien armada, but Fisher had spent his entire career preparing for this moment. "All ships, this is Fisher," he broadcast to his fleet. "Today we show the galaxy why Earth survived the nuclear wars, the climate crisis, and the AI uprising. We don't just fight wars. We perfect the art of winning them." The Coalition fleet entered human space expecting desperate resistance. Instead, they found something that confused their sensors and terrified their tactical computers: complete calm. The human ships weren't scrambling to defensive positions or calling for reinforcements. They were simply waiting. The first surprise came when alien commanders realized their quantum communication networks had been compromised. Every order they gave, every tactical decision they made, every private conversation between ships was being intercepted and analyzed by human computers that operated faster than alien minds could comprehend. "Sir," reported the tactical officer, "aboard Zolthek's flagship, the humans appear to be predicting our movements before we make them." "Impossible," Zolthek replied. "Our communications are encrypted with quantum algorithms that would take centuries to break." "They're not breaking the code, sir," the officer said nervously. "They're reading our transmissions in real time as we send them." Commander Sarah Wells commanded the stealth ship Ghostwalker, leading a squadron of vessels that demonstrated humanity's new approach to warfare. Instead of attacking the enemy ships directly, her targets were far more fundamental. "All stealth units, this is Wells," she transmitted on channels the aliens couldn't detect. "Begin reality anchor deployment. Target the quantum foundations of local spacetime." The human weapons didn't attack the alien fleet in any way the Coalition understood. Instead, they attacked the fabric of space itself around the enemy ships. Suddenly, the mighty galactic armada found itself trapped in pockets of altered physics where normal rules no longer applied. "What's happening to our systems?" demanded Admiral Vorthak as his psychic abilities suddenly stopped working. "My mind cannot reach beyond our own ship?" "Our weapons won't charge," reported a synthetic hegemony commander, its electronic voice filled with confusion. "The energy patterns we require no longer exist in this region of space." "Engine power is failing," called out an Andromedan captain. "The quantum fields that drive our ships have been altered somehow." Captain Fisher watched the alien fleet struggle with their suddenly useless technology. "This is what happens when a species spends 10,000 years fighting itself," he explained. To his bridge crew, "We don't just develop better weapons. We develop entirely new ways to think about warfare." The human attack was unlike anything in galactic military history. They didn't destroy enemy ships. They trapped them in bubbles of altered reality where alien technology simply couldn't function. Ships found themselves aging rapidly or caught in time loops, or existing in spaces where their own weapons couldn't fire. But the most frightening aspect wasn't the power of human technology. It was the precision. Every attack was carefully calculated to disable without killing. Alien crews watched in horror as their mighty warships became helpless, but none of them died unnecessarily. Supreme Commander Zolthek realized the true scope of humanity's capabilities as he watched his invincible armada being systematically neutralized. "They're not just advanced," he whispered to his bridge crew. "They're operating on principles we don't understand. How do you fight an enemy that can change the laws of physics?" The answer came from Captain Fisher as his fleet methodically disabled the trapped vessels. "You don't fight us, Commander. You learn from us. Humanity tried to warn your species that we've been choosing restraint over aggression. We hoped you would be wise enough to listen." The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, 12,000 alien ships floated helplessly in space, their crews alive but their vessels completely powerless. Not a single alien had been killed, but the greatest military force in galactic history had been rendered harmless. President Davis addressed the galaxy from the Oval Office. Her message broadcast to every inhabited world through commandeered alien communication networks. "People of the galaxy," she began, her voice calm but firm. "We didn't want this war. For 3 centuries, humanity chose peace over conquest, restraint over aggression. We tried to warn your leaders that our apparent weakness was actually our choice to be peaceful neighbors, but you wouldn't listen. You mistook our kindness for weakness and our patience for inability. So now you know the truth. When humans stop holding back, we don't just change the nature of battle, we change the nature of reality itself. This war can end today if your leaders choose wisdom over pride. Humanity offers the same thing we've always offered: peaceful coexistence between species that respect each other's rights to exist and grow. But if you choose to continue this conflict, understand what you're choosing. The weapons we use today represent technologies we developed centuries ago. What we've shown you isn't our ultimate capability. It's just the beginning of what we can do when forced to defend ourselves." General Grant watched the galactic response from Strategic Command. Most alien governments were calling for immediate peace negotiations, but the really ancient powers in the galaxy had remained silent. "Madam President," Grant reported, "we're detecting unusual energy signatures from the galactic core. Something very old and very powerful is beginning to stir." "The predecessors?" Davis asked. "Unknown, but the quantum disruptions match theoretical profiles for technology that predates known galactic civilization by millions of years." Davis studied the incoming data with growing concern. "It seems our demonstration has attracted attention from parties we didn't know existed. Begin preparations for Phase 3. If there are powers in this galaxy older than recorded history, they need to understand that humanity isn't going away quietly." The galaxy had learned that human warnings should be taken seriously. But deeper, in space, ancient minds that had slept for eons were beginning to wake up, drawn by signals that indicated a young species had developed capabilities that shouldn't be possible. The real test of humanity's resolve was about to begin. Admiral Keshmora sat on his command throne aboard the massive ship Cosmic Dominion. The Zephyrian officer was proud of his fleet of 300 warships. They were the finest vessels in the hegemony navy, equipped with weapons that could crack planets and shields that had never been broken. "Report," Keshmora commanded as his fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the new Texas system. His tactical officer, a young Zephyrian named Velther, studied the sensor readings. "Sir, we detect minimal human presence. A few orbital stations around the main planet, maybe 30 defensive platforms. Nothing that should trouble us." Keshmora allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The humans had been given 3 days to surrender their colonies, and they had chosen to make a pointless stand instead. This would be over quickly. "Open a communication channel to the human defenders," he ordered. "Offer them one final chance to surrender before we demonstrate proper galactic power." The response came from a human defense station orbiting New Texas. The voice belonged to Captain Danny Rogers, and it sounded remarkably calm for someone facing impossible odds. "Admiral Keshmora, this is Captain Rogers of the New Texas Defense Force. I'm going to give you one last warning. Turn your fleet around and leave this system immediately. You're about to discover why humans told you we were holding back. Keshmora's crystalline features twisted into what his species considered a smile. Pathetic human bluster. You face the might of 300 warships with your handful of platforms. Surrender now, and we will allow your people to live as servants. Admiral, Rogers replied, his voice still maddeningly calm, you really should have listened to Ambassador Morrison. All ships in the New Texas system initiate Ghost Protocol. Authorization Rogers Alpha 79. Keshmora was about to order the attack when his sensors began screaming warnings. All around his fleet, space itself seemed to shimmer and bend, then impossible contacts began appearing on every screen. Sir, Velther stammered, his voice filled with confusion and growing fear, we're detecting massive energy signatures appearing throughout the system. Hundreds of them. Where empty space had been moments before, sleek human warships began materializing. They seemed to emerge from nothing, their hulls dark and angular, designed with curves that hurt to look at directly. The ships didn't reflect light properly, making them appear to exist in more dimensions than space should allow. What sorcery is this? Keshmora demanded, rising from his throne as his sensors struggled to count the appearing vessels. How many ships are decloaking? Sir, I count over 400 human vessels, Velther reported, his voice cracking. They were completely invisible until now. Our best sensors detected nothing. Captain Rogers' voice filled the communication channels again. Admiral, meet the Shadow Fleet. We've been building these ships for 200 years, keeping them hidden in pocket dimensions until we needed them. We tried to tell your council that humanity has been developing warfare technology for 8 centuries, we just chose not to use it until now. Keshmora stared at the tactical display in growing horror. His 300 ships were now outnumbered, and these human vessels were unlike anything in his database. They moved wrong, as if the laws of physics were merely suggestions to them. All ships, attack formation, he commanded, trying to maintain his authority. Show these primitives why the hegemony rules the galaxy? The first human ship to fire was a destroyer called Hidden Dagger. Captain Amy Stone stood on its bridge, watching her weapon systems charge with energy that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously. Target acquired, her weapons officer reported. Firing quantum disruptor? The weapon that left the Hidden Dagger wasn't like anything the aliens had seen before. It looked like a beam of twisted light that seemed to bend space around it. The hegemony flagship shields, powerful enough to stop planet-killing weapons, reacted to the human attack in a way that defied understanding. The beam passed through the shields as if they weren't there. It didn't impact the Cosmic Dominion's armor or hull. Instead, the massive dreadnought simply stopped existing. There was no explosion, no debris, no energy release. One moment the ship was there, the next moment it was gone, leaving only empty space and confused radiation readings. Impossible, whispered Velther from the smaller command ship. Their weapon ignored our shields completely. How did they just erase our flagship? The battle that followed wasn't really a battle at all. It was a demonstration of what happened when a species that had been fighting wars for 10,000 years decided to get serious about combat. Human ships moved through space in ways that made no sense. They appeared behind enemy vessels without traveling the distance between. They fired weapons that struck from angles that didn't exist. Their defensive systems turned incoming attacks into harmless light shows. Captain Stone led a squadron of stealth frigates that systematically dismantled the hegemony's command structure. Her ships phased in and out of normal space, striking from directions that shouldn't be possible. Target their communication arrays, Stone ordered her squadron. Disable their ability to coordinate, but leave the crews alive. We're making a point about precision, not cruelty. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Parker watched the battle from her ship Silent Thunder. As Admiral Morrison's former aide, she had been given command of one of humanity's newest vessels. Her job was to ensure that alien survivors would have a very clear story to tell their superiors. All human vessels, Parker broadcast. Remember the rules of engagement. Disable, don't destroy. We want these crews to go home and explain to their leaders what happened here. The human weapons were terrifyingly precise. They could disable a ship's engines while leaving life support intact. They could destroy weapon systems while preserving crew quarters. They could shut down shields and communications while making sure every alien aboard survived to witness humanity's capabilities. Admiral Keshmora found himself aboard one of the few hegemony ships still capable of movement. His mighty fleet had been reduced to drifting hulks in less than 2 hours, not destroyed but completely helpless. Send an emergency transmission to Hegemony High Command, he ordered, his voice shaking with shock and fear. Tell them to cancel all operations against human space immediately. We have made a terrible mistake. Sir, his communications officer reported, the humans are jamming most of our frequencies, but they're allowing one channel to remain open. They want us to call for help, Keshmora realized. They want our superiors to know what happened. Here, Captain Rogers' voice came over the open channel one final time. Admiral, your crews are safe and your ships can be repaired. Consider this a lesson in the difference between can't and won't. Humanity chose not to use these weapons for 3 centuries. You forced us to change our minds. On Earth, President Davis watched the battle's conclusion from the Situation Room. The alien surrender had come exactly as the Defense Department's strategic models predicted. Phase 1 complete, Madam President, General Newman reported. Enemy fleet neutralized with minimal casualties on both sides. Maximum psychological impact achieved as planned. Excellent, Davis replied, but her expression remained serious. However, this was just the opening move. The hegemony isn't the real power in this galaxy. When the core worlds hear about this battle, they'll send everything they have. Director Walsh activated another set of classified displays, showing military assets that made even the Shadow Fleet look small. We're ready for Phase 2, Madam? President, the Deep Strike arsenal has been prepared for deployment. Good, Davis said, studying the tactical projections. Because if I know anything about galactic politics, our little demonstration at New Texas is going to make some very powerful enemies very angry. They'll come at us with everything they have, thinking that sheer numbers will overwhelm our technology. And when they do? Asked Secretary Hayes. When they do, Davis replied with a cold smile, they'll discover that the Shadow Fleet was just the beginning. Humanity has been preparing for this war a lot longer than anyone realizes. Across human space, secret installations that had been dormant for decades began receiving activation codes. The Shadow Fleet had been impressive, but it was only the first layer of humanity's true military capability. The galaxy was about to learn that when humans said they were holding back, they meant it in ways that no alien civilization could imagine. The real war was about to begin. In the deepest part of the galaxy, something that had been sleeping for 3 million years opened its eyes. The eternal consensus was not a single being, but a vast intelligence made from thousands of ancient minds connected together. These were the predecessors, the galaxy's first rulers, who had grown tired of governing and chose to sleep until something truly interesting happened. The probe that awakened them was unlike anything the current galaxy could build. It moved through dimensions that younger species hadn't discovered yet, appearing in Earth's solar system without triggering any human detection systems. It watched, learned, and reported back to its ancient masters. A young species has developed warfare capabilities that exceed our historical records. The Eternal Consensus concluded after reviewing the probe's data. This cannot be permitted. The galactic order we established must be maintained. Admiral Kate Hudson, now commanding the rebuilt Earth Defense Force, was the first to notice something wrong. We're detecting quantum signatures that don't match any known technology, she reported to the Pentagon from her flagship Defender of Earth. Something is scanning our solar system using methods we can't even understand? The probe's report reached the predecessor's primary consciousness deep in the galactic core. For the first time in millions of years, the ancient beings experienced something they had almost forgotten: concern. These humans weren't just advanced. They were developing in ways that challenged everything the predecessors thought they knew about how species should evolve. They must be controlled, the eternal consensus decided. If left unchecked, this species will disrupt the natural order we spent eons perfecting. The predecessors' response was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They didn't send ships or armies. Instead, they sent reality itself. Space began to twist and change around human colonies as the ancient beings demonstrated their mastery over the fundamental forces of existence. On the frontier world of New Oregon, Governor Mike Stevens watched in horror as his planet's basic physics began to fail. Gravity became unreliable, flowing in different directions without warning. Time moved faster in some places and slower in others. The very atoms that made up matter started vibrating at frequencies that shouldn't exist. "This isn't an attack," Stevens reported to Earth as his colonists fled to emergency shelters. "They're rewriting the rules of how our world works. Our equipment can't function when the laws of physics keep changing." Captain Jennifer Cole commanded the experimental vessel Reality Anchor, humanity's first ship designed to fight enemies who could manipulate space and time. But even her advanced technology was no match for beings who treated reality like a rough draft that needed editing. "They're not just using advanced science," Cole reported as her ship struggled to maintain stable existence. "They're operating on principles that we haven't even discovered yet. Our weapons can't hurt them because they exist in a state that makes our attacks impossible." But humanity's greatest strength had always been learning fast under pressure. Dr. Alan Porter, Earth's leading expert on quantum physics, made a crucial discovery while studying the predecessor probe's energy patterns. "They're not gods," Porter announced to an emergency meeting of Earth's top scientists. "They're just very, very old. And being old means they're set in their ways. They're using the same techniques they perfected millions of years ago. What does that mean for us?" asked Dr. Rachel Martin, the head of the Weapons Research Division. "It means they've stopped growing," Porter explained. "They perfected reality manipulation and then stopped learning new ways to do it. But we're still learning. We can figure out how to do what they do, but we can do it differently." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source: human children. Young minds that hadn't yet learned the adult assumption that physics had to follow. Certain rules began developing new ways to understand predecessor technology. 12-year-old genius Emma Watson, working with the most advanced quantum computers on Earth, discovered something the adult scientists had missed. "They're like really, good chess players," she explained to the gathered researchers. "They can think a million moves ahead, but only if everyone follows the same rules. If we change the rules completely, they have to start over." This insight led to humanity's most dangerous military development yet: weapons that operated on principles of controlled chaos. Instead of following predictable patterns that the predecessors could calculate and counter, human technology began to embrace random chance as a tactical advantage. Captain Cole's rebuilt ship, now called Chaos Theory, became the first vessel to successfully fight predecessor forces. Her weapons didn't work the same way twice, making them impossible for the ancient beings to predict or defend against. "All human ships," Cole broadcast during the first major battle with predecessor forces, "remember that unpredictability is our greatest weapon. Don't follow standard attack patterns. Let instinct and creativity guide your tactics." The battle for New Oregon became a conflict between two completely different philosophies. The predecessors fought using perfect mathematical precision, calculating every possible outcome before making a move. Humanity fought using controlled chaos, making decisions based on intuition and adapting instantly to changing conditions. For the first time in millions of years, the predecessors found themselves genuinely challenged. Their reality manipulation worked perfectly against species that followed predictable patterns, but humans refused to be predictable. How are they doing this? The eternal consensus asked itself as human forces successfully defended New Oregon. Their technology should be inferior to ours, but they're matching our capabilities. The answer was typically human. While the predecessors had spent millions of years perfecting their existing knowledge, humanity had spent decades learning to improve on everything they encountered. Young human scientists working with AI systems and quantum computers began developing reality manipulation techniques that actually surpassed predecessor capabilities. Dr. Porter's daughter, 16-year-old Rebecca Porter, made the connection that changed everything. Dad, what if the problem isn't that their math is better than ours? What if the problem is that they're still using math at all? What do you mean? Dr. Porter asked his daughter. They think reality follows rules, Rebecca explained. But what if reality is more like a conversation? What if instead of forcing it to obey us, we ask it to help us? This insight led to humanity's most revolutionary discovery, consciousness. Could influence reality not through force but through cooperation. Human minds, working together with quantum computers, began to negotiate with the fundamental forces of the universe rather than trying to control them. The predecessors watched, in growing alarm as human technology evolved beyond their understanding. These young beings weren't just copying ancient techniques. They were developing entirely new relationships with reality itself. They're doing in decades what took us millennia to achieve, the eternal consensus realized. And they're surpassing our limits? Captain Cole led a fleet of ships that could phase between dimensions, not by forcing their way through like predecessor vessels, but by asking space-time to bend around them. Her weapons didn't destroy targets by overwhelming them with power. They convinced matter to reorganize itself into more peaceful configurations. This is impossible, transmitted a predecessor commander as his ancient battleship found its weapons. Turning into flowers, reality cannot be negotiated with. It must be controlled. That's where you're wrong, Cole replied. Reality has been waiting millions of years for someone to try talking to it instead of ordering it around. The eternal consensus, faced with the first real threat to their authority in galactic history, made a decision that would change everything. If these humans could not be controlled through conventional reality manipulation, then reality itself would have to be rewritten on a fundamental level, deep in the galactic core. The predecessors began to activate their ultimate weapon, the reality engine, a device capable of rewriting the laws of physics across entire galactic regions. But as the ancient machine powered up, humanity prepared its own final gambit, a strategy so dangerous it could destroy the galaxy itself, but might be the only way to preserve human freedom and the right of all species to grow beyond their origins. The reality engine emerged from the galactic core like a mechanical moon covered in patterns that seemed to exist in more dimensions than space should allow. The ancient device had been built when the galaxy was young, designed to rewrite the laws of physics across millions of star systems at once. President Davis stood in the rebuilt situation room with humanity's greatest minds. Dr. Alan Porter and his teenage daughter, Rebecca, were explaining their desperate plan to save not just humanity, but the right of all species to grow and change. Let me understand this correctly, Davis said, looking at the holographic models floating above the table. You want to create a paradox so complex that the universe itself will have to choose between the predecessor's order and our chaos. It's more complicated than that, Dr. Porter replied. But yes, we're going to introduce a logical contradiction so fundamental that reality will have to pick one way of existing over another. Rebecca stepped forward, her young face serious beyond her 16 years. The predecessors think reality has to follow their rules. But what if we prove that consciousness and free will are more important than mathematical order? General Grant pulled up displays showing humanity's final fleet. Only 50 ships remained operational, but each one represented the peak of human achievement. Our entire civilization is betting on this working. Our entire civilization is betting on the idea that freedom matters more than control, Admiral Hudson corrected from her flagship Indomitable Spirit. If we fail, humanity becomes extinct. If we succeed, we change what it means to exist in this universe. The final battle began not with weapons or shields, but with ideas made real. Captain Cole's chaos theory led the human fleet toward the reality engine, while Predecessor forces deployed defenses that turned space and time into impossible geometries. The predecessors had learned from their previous defeats. This time, they weren't trying to control human technology. Instead, they were rewriting the fundamental rules that allowed human technology to work at all. "Sir, our quantum drives are failing," reported Cole's engineer as the ship struggled against forces that were changing the nature of motion itself. "They're making it impossible for matter to move faster than light?" "Then we don't move faster than light," Cole replied calmly. "We convince light to slow down and wait for us." The human fleet had stopped trying to fight the predecessors using conventional tactics. Instead, they began negotiating with reality itself, asking the universe to help them find solutions the ancient beings couldn't predict. But the real battle wasn't happening in space. It was happening in laboratories and communication centers across human territory, where scientists and ordinary people worked together on humanity's ultimate weapon, collective consciousness. Dr. Rebecca Porter had discovered that the reality engine required perfect mathematical precision to function. Every calculation had to be exact, every variable accounted for, every possibility controlled. But there was one thing the ancient device couldn't calculate: genuine free will. "Dad, what if we don't try to beat their math?" Rebecca asked during a quantum transmission from Earth to the battle fleet. "What if we introduce something that makes perfect math impossible?" The answer was brilliantly simple and uniquely human. They were going to give every conscious being in human space the power to influence reality through pure choice. Not philosophical choice, but quantum choice that could affect the basic structure of existence. Captain Cole's ship became the delivery system for humanity's final gambit, a consciousness amplifier that would allow millions of humans throughout the galaxy to simultaneously observe and influence quantum events on a cosmic scale. All human vessels, all human colonies, everyone listening to this transmission, Cole broadcast on every channel humanity controlled. "In 10 seconds, I need every single human being to make a choice. Not a planned choice, not a calculated choice, but a completely free choice about anything at all. Choose something and mean it with everything you are." The predecessor's reality engine was designed to account for every variable in the universe, but it suddenly faced something impossible: billions of conscious beings making truly unpredictable decisions at exactly the same moment. 8-year-old Tommy Chen on Earth chose to believe that stars could sing. 70-year-old farmer Bill Jackson on New Texas chose to remember his wife's smile. Teenager Maria Santos on the Mars colonies chose to hope for a better tomorrow. Across human space, millions of people made millions of different choices, each one genuine and free. The mathematical certainty that powered predecessor technology collapsed under the weight of pure human unpredictability. The reality engine, faced with variables it couldn't calculate, began to malfunction in ways its creators had never imagined. For a moment that lasted forever, two completely different ways of understanding existence tried to occupy the same space. The predecessor's perfect order met humanity's beautiful chaos, and the universe had to decide which one represented its true nature. Then reality made its choice. The reality engine didn't explode or shut down. Instead, it transformed. The ancient device, designed to impose rigid control, became something entirely new. A machine that could create instead of just control, that could grow instead of just maintain. The change spread across the galaxy like a wave of possibility. On thousands of worlds, scientists discovered that the universe had become more flexible, more willing to bend its rules when consciousness asked politely instead of demanding obedience. Admiral Hudson watched the transformation from her command bridge and realized what humanity had accomplished. "We didn't just win the war," she said in amazement. "We've given the universe permission to be creative again." The eternal consensus, its perfect order shattered by human chaos, sent a final transmission to Earth. "What have you done?" The universe was perfect, predictable, stable. President Davis responded with words that would be remembered throughout galactic history. "The universe wasn't perfect, it was dead. We brought it back to life." But the most remarkable change came from the predecessors. themselves. Freed from their obsession with control, the ancient beings began to remember what they had forgotten during their millions of years of sleep: curiosity. They started asking questions instead of demanding answers, learning instead of just maintaining. The war ended not with surrender or conquest, but with the formation of the new Galactic Compact. For the first time in galactic history, the treaty recognized that the universe was big enough for both order and chaos. Ancient wisdom and young innovation. Species across the galaxy discovered new possibilities in a universe where the laws of physics had room for growth. The rigid rules that had governed galactic civilization for millions of years became suggestions that could be improved upon. Captain Cole found herself working alongside predecessor engineers, teaching them about controlled chaos while learning from their mastery of order. The trick, she explained to her ancient students, is not choosing between control and freedom. It's learning how to dance with both. Dr. Rebecca Porter became the galaxy's youngest professor, traveling between worlds to teach the new science of conscious physics. Reality isn't a machine you operate, she would tell her students. It's a partner you work with. The final scene showed Ambassador Morrison, now elderly but still sharp, addressing the new Galactic Council where humans and predecessors worked together to explore what the universe could become when consciousness and physics cooperated. "We warned you we were holding back," Morrison said with a gentle smile. "But the truth is, we didn't know how much we were holding back until we finally let go. We thought we were just fighting for human survival. Instead, we discovered we were fighting for the universe's right to grow." As the council chamber filled with beings from 1,000 worlds, all working together to explore the new possibilities their universe offered, Morrison's final words echoed across space. The galaxy is about to become a much more interesting place. And the best part is, none of us know exactly what it's going to become. We get to discover it together. The universe, no longer trapped between rigid order and pure chaos, began to dream of possibilities that neither humans nor predecessors had imagined alone. The war was over, but the real adventure was just beginning.